Sure, you could try it. I mean, Mustache Guy tried it. You know, Little Mustache Guy, he tried it back in the day, and it worked for a while. And the ultimate problem is that it you have a group of people. Remember, people. It's a people problem. It is not a politician problem. Politician is downstream of people, okay? And people always want stuff. And politicians naturally, just who they are. And it doesn't make any difference what their politics are. They could be left, right, center, it doesn't matter. They have this very natural tendency to always say, you're right, I agree. You're right, I agree. And get people nodding because they want votes, right? That's how this works, right? Yeah, see, it's just how people are, right? Nobody wants to actually say no. You know how many times I've had a customer, you know, when I used to do sales, you know how many times I've had a customer just flat out say, nope, not interested? Very few. Very few. It's usually, well, let me think about it. Let me talk to the wife. They deflect. They do everything they can. I mean, ask any salesman. Ask any salesman who's been doing it for more than 10 years, and they'll tell you every excuse in the world they've heard for someone to say anything but no. Politicians are no different. They're salesmen, right? Their job is to sell you on the idea of the future, right? That's their job. That's what they do. And people get excited about it. They're like, yeah, I'm going to vote for that guy. There's no real plan to do any of that, right? Like, that takes actual vision. And actual vision doesn't typically come from politicians. Actual vision usually comes from people who just start doing something and other people just start naturally following. They don't really choose to go out and be a great leader. They just go start doing their own thing, and other people go, wow, that's a good idea, right? That's a natural existence. The politician, it's usually something like, vote for me and I'll give you whatever you want. People will always fall for that, by the way. A large number of people will always fall for that. That is the Pied Piper story. People will do this. So, to your question, you know, where it's like, well, what about backing it by labor and everything? I get the idea. I've had it explained to me like probably 24 times. And it always comes back to the same problem of you're still then relying on a group of people that you voted for to not inflate the currency. And anytime that it's backed, well, but it's backed by assets and labor, those valuations become arbitrary. You end up starting to use the assets to justify the currency and the currency to justify the assets. You get basically a circular logic. That's all that ends up happening. There's no actual market that exists there. It's just whatever. So it's just like your property taxes. Largely kind of arbitrary. They just say, oh, well, you know, we think your house is worth this much money. And then they just raise your property taxes. It's arbitrary, right? I mean, this is what ends up happening with this kind of stuff. You end up using, there are mathematicians, by the way, out there who get caught in this loop as well. For real. They get caught in this loop. They start using units of measurement that justify their unit of measurement, and one is just constantly justifying the other. In fact, the movie Interstellar, if you look up the movie Interstellar and you watch, there's actually a conversation where, you know, the one chick who grows up and everything, she's like looking at the equation going, hold on, each side of this equation is just yeah, exactly. In other words, it wasn't real. It wasn't a real equation because there was no actual base unit of measurement. You have to have a base unit of measurement that doesn't change for anybody, regardless of, you know, language barriers, which, I mean, like, again, so then you're back to math, because mathematics is the universal language. So you need to have something that doesn't change and can't be counterfeited. And that's a tough one, because once there's an accurate unit of measurement out there that has no politics on it, that brings about a completely different view of the world, and it changes all of the politics, because then politicians and corporate oligarchs and you know, bankers, like, they can't just keep snowing you with like, oh, we can do this and we can do that. Like, it doesn't work that way. I covered this a while back with Nixon. Nixon's speech, his whole idea, getting the world to concede that the dollar was better than gold. Yeah, it's better than gold from a political standpoint, because they can just sort of keep the masses happy and then just constantly push the inflation off onto the poor, which is reality. That is what happens. That's why if you want to solve poverty, then you have an accurate unit of measurement and you stop stealing their money and watch how quickly the poor become very wealthy. Like very wealthy very quickly. They will hoover up most of the wealth, actually. For real. And that's where you have your last is first and your first is last. That's where that actually happens. Because poor people don't have a problem with, they understand not, most people are okay with not having like 3 private jets, right? Like, I mean, most of us, like, we've learned to get along just fine without having multiple private jets. We've learned to get along just fine without like gold-plated toilets. Like we've managed to get along just fine without all that, so there's kind of really no reason to do any of that. So yeah, so the people who want to continue those ridiculous lifestyles end up effectively paying all the poor people to continue this lifestyle until they run out of money. And once they run out of money in an honest unit of measurement, the poor people end up with it. And this creates your if you want to call it wealth equality, I hesitate to use that term, but if you want to call it like that, that's what it would end up with. And it doesn't require a system. It doesn't require a management system. It doesn't require a bunch of government. It doesn't require any of these things. It requires financial physics, an actual unit of measurement that sticks and it doesn't move around. And by the way, I mean, just, for the commenter, I'm not actually directing that at you. I'm just like, dude, I mean, like, this is a question I get a lot, though. And I don't know how many different ways I can explain the exact same answer to like thousands of people. I'll get these DMs and everything, and I'll get these long rants, and I don't mean, again, like I'm not talking about this commenter at all. I'm not dissing you at all. I'm saying, like, I get this a lot, and I give the answers, and it's like, well, but I don't want to hear that answer. I know you don't want to hear that answer because you're greedy and you won't accept it. You want more than what you put out. That is a natural default setting of humanity. Okay? That's part of the conservation of energy. That is normal. That is part of thermodynamics. It's part of physics. It's part of the physics that make up every single shred of life on this planet. Of course you want more than what you put out. Of course you do. That is not a new thing. So, I mean, like, what most people are wanting is they're wanting a system that somehow they get to have everything that they want. It's just like the healthcare is a human right people. Like, okay, let's try it out. Who's going to pay for that? Well, that's just ridiculous. No, it's really not. So are we just going to print money? Well, no, we can tax the rich. Okay, if you were to tax the rich at 100% and take all their money and give it to the doctors, what incentive do the doctors then have to be doctors then? They're already rich. See, I mean, like, do you see that? Like, all of this stuff cancels itself out. All of it does. Everything is going to cancel itself out every single time because everything is just trying to justify its own existence, as opposed to stopping and saying, hold on, we can justify existence mathematically, but you have to have some kind of base. You have to have a beginning. Once you have a beginning, then it's very easy to unwind the rest of it and realize that, oh yeah, okay, so we just need to have people that are putting out more energy and they're getting more back. Exactly. That is precisely how it works. And you get that through small business. I mean, and most people don't want to talk about that, but all small businesses, all that means is just somebody doing work himself or herself, and doesn't need a corporate oligarch to help them. Doesn't need to have a giant system. Doesn't need, yeah. I mean, like, does that make sense? Like, none of this requires a system. Everybody is still stuck in the idea because you all went to school. Y'all went to the goddamn schools. Stay out of school. School is not a place for smart people. I promise you. It will make you dumber than when you went in. No, stay out of the schools and start thinking about this stuff and start looking at it logically. Use that kid logic that you're born with. You were born a natural scientist. Just stay with that logic and don't let anybody tell you any different.